let's move on and dip down into the Championship, where we're going to talk about Mark Robins at Coventry City. He's done remarkably well since taking over when they were in League Two. They survived in the Championship despite being one of the favourites to go down last season, and survived with a few games to spare as well, which was a terrific achievement. Mark Robins himself is an interesting character. He admits that he can be hard to read and that he comes across as maybe a little humourless and dour in post-match interviews, but Mike, there's far more to him than just meets the eye, isn't there?
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job at Coventry. He did a fantastic job first time around. I was doing a very good job. He's done a fantastic job since. And I see him as, first and foremost, he's a maintenance man. You can throw anything at him and he just absorbs it in terms of, the logistics, things that can go wrong. Once the system's in place, there's virtually nobody better than Mark Robins out there to keep a well-oiled machine running smoothly. And anything that tries to disrupt it and get in the way, he just deals with them problems, When he came in at League One level, Coventry were on course for relegation. They were going down. He came in, and his first priority was to kind of save people's jobs, and stuff like that. But since then, they've come back now, 2 divisions, 2 promotions at different levels. And in that time, little things that you don't even realise. I didn't even realise he'd lost his assistant manager, to illness and a spate of cruciate ligament injuries to players, having to sell your best striker 2 or 3 times. All these different things have come. We're not even got onto the fact that they were a homeless club for 2 seasons. All of these things, Robbins just takes it in his stride. These are just problems to be solved. There's no panic. I'll take care of it. And that's what he's really good at. He's just keeping everything running smoothly, and anything that tries to come in and disrupt things, just dealing with it in an effortless manner.
Yeah, he is calmness personified. Comes across, as we say, as sort of quite dour at times, quiet and unassuming. But there is, as much as you say he's a maintenance man and keeps things moving, there's definitely a ruthless streak. If Mark Robins makes a decision about a player, that tends to be that, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it's basically, he's not very emotional. That's basically the long and short of it. He doesn't really identify with emotions and people's emotions, so I don't think it's necessarily difficult for him to make a ruthless decision because, it's not really on his radar to think of the other person's emotions, to think of, And, I mean, this is kind of colours so many things of what happens at Coventry. Is his it's a blind spot for him, the emotional realm, all he knows how to do is how to help people. Is how to come up with solutions to problems that help you. That's the way he connects with people. Is just by solving problems and being as helpful as he possibly can. You talk about, there's a big emotional dynamic that goes on at Coventry with the owners and the supporters, and it's very disenfranchised as a club in that regard. And Robins doesn't really know how to deal with it. He doesn't, he never tries to bond the owners and the fans. He just says the owners are good people, and he just said the fans are good people. And, I don't really get why they don't get on, because I don't get the emotions. I don't get it. All I know is that when the fans are behind us, it makes a real difference. So throughout, whether it's dealing with players, whether it's dealing with fans, whether it's dealing with owners, there's this emotional disconnect. He doesn't quite get it. All I know how to do is how to help people, and that's what I'll just continue to do. I'll just keep getting on with the job, keep helping, and hopefully other people can sort their emotional issues out.
Yeah, he has, though, endeared himself to the fans, not just for what's happened on the pitch and the progress made, but he appears regularly at supporters forums and has insisted that some of his players do the same. He's done plenty of videos for the club's official feeds, and he's regularly talking about the 12th man, and as you say, praising the supporters for the impact that they have, despite Coventry being homeless for a couple of seasons. So clearly, although he doesn't understand the disconnect between supporters and owners, he does always want to try and get on the side of the supporters, and I think has done a good job in helping them warm to him.
Oh yeah, he certainly understands that there is an aspiration there to have a rocking fan base that's behind the team, because he knows how it helps the team. For as little as he doesn't necessarily identify with emotions on a very nuanced level, he understands that you got 15, 20,000 fans roaring the team on. It makes a big difference to the performance of your players, and so he understands that this is again, it's like the fans are almost like a tool to be utilised, to that can help us to achieve what we want to achieve. We need them on side. So I think, yeah, it's that much is very much on his radar, and I do think it's a big deal with Coventry going back to the Ricoh now. There's been this thing. I remember when they first went to St Andrews, and even among the Coventry fan base, they had this fantastic record at St Andrews as not being their ground. And at the beginning, when it first got going in League One, some of the fans that went were basically saying, we've got rid of the moaners now. We got rid of most of the pessimists. This is a more pure fan base that wants to get behind the team. So even though it's a smaller number, the team's better for it. Well, now they're back in Coventry, they're going back to the Ricoh. I think it's going to be vitally important that whoever comes back, this doesn't become a difficult place to play again. And that those people who possibly didn't follow the team to St Andrews and are now going back to the Ricoh need to understand they've got a huge part to play in for Coventry going forward.
It's quite self-deprecating as well, I found, when reading interviews with Mark Robins. He knows what his strengths are, as you've highlighted most of those, but he also knows what his weaknesses are and is happy to admit that as well. Says he's not particularly a quick learner, but also talks about how the knockbacks and the failures and the things that have gone wrong and even just the small day-to-day problems set you up for later in your managerial career. And that's something he credits Graham Taylor with telling him, but a tremendous amount of influences, of course, playing under Sir Alex Ferguson being possibly the biggest. And it was Sir Alex who told him that one day he'd make a good manager.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you could say we're back into Dean Smith territory a little bit here. This is about learning from your experiences and becoming a better manager over time. And it kind of forms your identity, everything that you've experienced before. So that's very much what Robins is all about. And I think one of the other things I noticed him say as well is, you mentioned delegation with Dean Smith. I think it's the same thing here with Mark Robins as well. He's talked about one of the biggest things he's learned down the years is when to delegate. And I think it's as managers of his type become more developed over time, they gain this bigger and better appreciation of people's skill sets and resources and how to use people as resources. And when somebody's better at a job than you are, no matter how much, because he's so effortless at solving problems, there's a temptation to want to solve everything yourself and be so hands-on that you've literally got everything handled. Because, this is what energises him. This is what he really enjoys to do, is just have a handle on everything and have control of everything. But when it becomes more sophisticated, it's understanding that actually this guy, in the case of an example he uses, at AD Vivash, his assistant, is a better coach than me. So as I can put on good coaching sessions, but he can put on better coaching sessions, and he's there to do that. So let him get on with that. Let people get on with the jobs that they're best at doing. And then it enables me to take a step back and observe more than I might have done previously. And I think when he talks about this, he talks about himself in a quite old school way. I've gone more old school as the years have gone by because I take a step back. I don't think it's old school. I think it's sporting director. I think he's gone from being more of a manager to more of a sporting director as the years go by.
That is a role that you feel he might take on in the future, because we see Neil Warnock come back time and time again and pretend to be retiring and pretend to be stepping away from the game. But Mark Robins has genuinely talked about how he doesn't want to be managing in his 70s. He says he wants to travel, he wants to live abroad, he wants to spend time with his grandkids as well. And so you can imagine that maybe a nice cosy sporting director role would suit him later in life.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, actually. It would make a lot of sense. Like you say, it's hard to imagine Mark Robins not just quickly dealing with the logistical problems before anyone had noticed there was a problem there. So that kind of that side of it. But maybe if you know how you solve them problems and you get the right manager and guide them in that way. But yeah, absolutely, I could see him being a sporting director. Now you mentioned that in conjunction with the fact that he doesn't see himself going on forever. I think he'd suit the role very well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see if that is a role in the future. But for now, he obviously has plenty going on at Coventry City. And I just want to go back to what you said about the supporters. Do you think that maybe he's benefited from the supporters not necessarily always being there, but also from, when he took over Coventry, were, I think it's fair to say, in the doldrums and at one of their lowest points in their history? Do you think that Mark Robins is a manager who is better when there is less expectation and there is, less pressure on his shoulders, and like you say, he can just get on with doing the little firefighting jobs.
Possibly. I do think that it has helped Coventry the last couple of seasons, moving to St Andrews. Or it's helped Robbins to because he doesn't really know how to deal with that emotional side. It's easier to not have the emotional side there. When I think of Coventry, a really good club to compare Coventry to at the moment is Bradford. There's an alternative story there. These are two clubs that 20 years ago were relegated from the Premier League together. And at different stages, they've followed similar storylines. Bradford's a club that gets over 10,000 every week at home, and they've got what initially seemed like good owners that came in that wanted to spend money, and, things have gone sour there. Coventry have not got the owners that the fans want, but they're very lucky to be in the Championship. This is a club that 3 years ago was in League Two, sneaking into the playoff places on the final day. There's an alternative story there where they're still in League Two. And I think Coventry fans, returning Coventry fans just need to appreciate, hang on, we're in the Championship here. We might not have the owners that we want, but here we are with a manager that we should really appreciate. And let's just put things aside, because I think the next step for Coventry has got to be tapping into that fan base and tapping into that passion from the stands. Because I think they're probably approaching a stage now where they might be hitting a ceiling of, everything they've had to navigate and the problems that have surfaced every step of the way, yet they've still managed to climb 2 divisions and survive in the Championship. Last season, terrible away record, a team that, conceded an early goal away from home, almost to the stage that it became a comfort blanket, was how Mark Robbins described it. We were comfortable once we were 1-0 down in an away game. This season, they need to be looking to consolidate with a degree more comfort. And, again, we go back to the emotions. It was the players having their own team meetings that kind of dug deep for the motivation, because it wasn't Robin's skill set necessarily. It's giving the players ownership of running themselves in terms of the motivational side. So they're kind of at this place now, Coventry, where they need a season of consolidation without beat, because I think for a lot of last season, they weren't quite sure if they belonged in the Championship. This is the season to try to really sort of put down a marker and say, yeah, we do belong here. We've not got the biggest budget. We've not got owners that throw money about, but we're a well-run club. And this is where we really consolidate at this level. I think that's kind of what this season's got to look like for them. But it's the fans that are going to make the difference now. They've got to come back in the numbers and really get behind the team week in, week out. And particularly when things aren't going well.
And finally, you mentioned there about him sort of taking a step back with the motivation. He's talked about the players policing the dressing room themselves, but he regularly name checks his head of recruitment. Recruitment is a really big thing. He talks about wanting young and hungry players, but interestingly, one thing he mentions is that he wants young, hungry players who make good leaders, hence the dressing room policing itself. You don't often get that at that young age. If you're signing players 19, 20, you don't often get leadership qualities at that early stage. So I guess it's a very specific type of player that Robbins is looking for. And works very closely with the recruitment team, which I believe they didn't have when he came in. So it's something that he has kind of integrated and leans heavily on.
Yeah, it goes back to the delegation, like you say, and experience over time. He's embraced analytics. He doesn't know necessarily, he's very good with metrics. He's very quick to understand metrics because they're things that you can use to solve problems quickly. But he's not of an analytical mindset. Analytics would never be something he goes into, but he's embraced it. This is new stuff coming into the game, new technology. Once he's realised that, hang on, these nerds on the laptops can solve real big problems for me, it's become it's like, yeah, I'm going to use that as a tool then. That's really important. So he's embraced it, he's brought it in, and it's made a big difference to Coventry as a club. And I think, I'm guessing, given that they've had to sell the best players so many times along the way, yet they still keep improving incrementally, that, recruitment has been a huge part of that.
Absolutely. Mark Robbins at Coventry next season. So, as you were saying, Mike, season of consolidation, possibly pushing higher up, but largely dependent on fans, and I guess largely dependent on who walks through the door this summer, because there will be some interest in some of those players who performed admirably at Championship level, and they also look a little bit light in the striking department currently.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value for Coventry at the moment. There's a lot of value in this being a well-oiled machine. and I think it's been quite a big turnover of players. Yet it still feels like the same process. It still feels like, I was thinking Trigger and his broom, like so many different heads and so many different handles. But it's like no matter how many times you replace it, it's still the same. It's still the same well-oiled machine that's running that Mark Robins is keeping ticking over. So there's a degree of continuity. I think that's a strength that Coventry have got relative to other clubs. That things can continue to run well. In spite of the recruitment challenges or the loss of players, the challenges that might come in that regard. They've got a good recruitment department to identify and find talent that's suitable, like you say, and looking for the leadership qualities as well. And I'd love to know how they do that, whether they have metrics for that or how they define, with Robins not being an emotional person, or how he identifies those young players with leadership qualities, because it's clearly something, they're onto something. They've found their niche, it works, they're bringing those players in. And that's what's keeping the machine working. So, yeah, I see no reason why this can't continue in an incremental manner. I don't see any reason why Coventry can't continue to progress over a number of years up the Championship